I grew up with my grandfather telling stories about being a soldier during World War II. He was such an amazing storyteller. His stories were vivid. You felt like you were with him walking that journey with his brothers, the soldiers that he served with. The interesting thing is he told those stories so many times that we knew the stories. And we knew where the pauses were, and we knew who the players were, and we knew the jokes. And sometimes we'd be like, Pa, we're gonna still tell those stories. And he goes, yep, because those stories need to be told. Today, I'd give anything to hear my grandfather tell one of those stories. As fraternity men and sorority women, we're a part of a story. Whether those stories were written in the 1800s, early 1900s, or maybe even in recent years, those stories were written by young college students and even some teenagers. And they were put into words, and they were written in these beautiful ceremonies and rites of passage that some of us refer to as ritual. The interesting thing is you know what people say about us today? Is that our rituals and those ceremonies are so secret, we don't even talk to each other about it. Kind of a sad state of affairs. At some point, we have to decide if those stories are important. Fraternity men and college women, sorority women across the country walk around with letters displayed, and many of them don't even know what they mean. Those stories were written by young men and women who wanted to surround themselves with people who had shared values. They wanted to surround themselves with people who had beliefs, who were going to challenge them to be better people. They shared those ceremonies in words, in symbols, in colors, and they wanted to pass on the kind of people, I believe, they thought would come after them. For many of us, I guess our stories in the news today are not very good because other people are telling the story as they see it. And in some regards, we're giving them a reason to do that. I guess what I'm here today to talk about really is how do we change that narrative? How do we make sure that those stories are worth being told as time goes on? Now, I don't stand in front of you as somebody who knew a lot when I was your age. I was one of those people that as an undergraduate sorority woman, I thought partying like a rock star was what I was supposed to do, and I was good at it. And when I became the national president of my sorority, I called my sorority big sister and I said, do you know what just happened in the sorority? She said, no, what? I said, I was elected the national president. She said, you're shitting me. I said, no. She said, Mary Ann, you never held an office in the chapter. I'm like, I know. And she said, and you partied like a rock star. I'm like, thanks to you. And what happened was I was a fraternity and sorority life advisor. And I had been on a campus for 3 months, and I was all of 25 years old with my master's degree. And I was sitting in my office one day, and a young fraternity man came into my office, and he goes, Mary Ann, I've been listening to you. I'm like, ooh, I must be doing good if a fraternity man's listening to me. And he said, but I have some questions for you. I said, awesome, bring them on. He said, have you ever read Theta Phi Alpha's Ritual, my sorority? And I can guarantee you at that point, I don't even know what that was. I said, this isn't about me. This is about you. I'm the advisor, all of 25 years old. He said, do you know where your sorority was founded? What your values are? Who your founders are? I said, this isn't about me. This is about you. I'm the advisor, all of 25 years old. And he told me one of the most important things anybody ever said to me. He said, yes, this is about you too. Because until you know where you came from and what you stand for, you can't teach us what we need to know. Yeah, that's what I said too. And that young man left my office, and I could not get him out of my head. And I called him, and I said, can we talk? He said, absolutely. And we walked our campus, and that young fraternity man taught me more about what I didn't know were things that I still needed to learn. Many of you are a part of organizations today, and you benefit from that. Many of you tell people, and you're very proud to tell people that you're a member of a fraternity and sorority for a short period of time. If we keep you through your senior year, we're very lucky. Many of you walk across the stage no longer affiliated with an organization that you loved so much at the beginning. Many of you walk across the stage and you say, I was a member of a sorority or fraternity. You will never hear our MPHC brothers and sisters or our multicultural brothers and sisters say they was. More than likely, they will ask you if you said you was, if you had been suspended. Because they believe that it was a lifetime of stories, a lifetime of people who really wanted to grow up together, and who I believe, if you stay in this game long enough, you get to grow old together. Fraternities and sororities were never created to create great fraternity men and sorority women. They were created to create great humans who were gonna be good friends, who were gonna keep people safe and challenge and support one another. They never expected, I don't think, in their wildest dreams, that the news media today, the articles and the stories, headlines would be hazing death. They never thought that that would be what we were about. So in our world, what is the legacy that we're leaving? What are we telling people who come after us why fraternities and sororities are something that is still good in the lives of young people, or if you stay in this game long enough, people who stay and are active alumni and alumni? What do we say to them? What will our legacy be? Telling our story is how we take control. But you have to decide what your role is in the story. What role, what character do you play? Are you the person that causes us to have these articles in the newspaper and online? Are we the people who, when we look at one another, you're not proud to be those people, who you bring those brothers and sisters home to your family? Those young founders were your age, and they believed in something so great that they made, and they were intentional about passing it on. What will your story be? What will our story be? Every day we're asked right now, those of us who work with fraternities and sororities who believe in this, they ask us why. Why do you believe? And I have to say that when sorority and fraternity is done right, we are amazing and unstoppable. But at some point we've gotten off track. The story right now is not one that some of us are proud of. The story today is that many people won't wear letters to class because they're afraid that it'll affect their grade. The story today is many people don't put that they're a fraternity or sorority member, or a fraternity member, because on a resume, because they don't think they're gonna get a job if somebody sees that. We have the responsibility to change the story. We have the responsibility to change our actions. We have the responsibility to change it in other people's lives. I've been fortunate enough to be surrounded by incredible people in my life. And one of those people, when I think about a legacy, is my brother, Father John Arnone. I've known John for over 30 years. And John was a Catholic priest in New Orleans who was one of the most popular people you ever want to meet. You walk down the streets of New Orleans and every other person knew John. In April, John went into the hospital for a very normal procedure. And on Cinco de Mayo, John passed away. And of course he passed away on Cinco de Mayo, because if you were gonna have a party, John Arnone was gonna be invited to that party because he was gonna bring it. At his services, more than 3,000 people showed up to pay their respects and to honor him. And people, person after person, came up to family members and said, Father John was my best friend. And we'd be like, who are you? Father John was my best friend. Now, what's your name again? Because if you were Father John's best friend, you had eaten his mama's lasagna. They're a big Italian family in New Orleans. You had been to a party at their house. We would know you. But they were Father John's best friend. An article came out in the newspaper after many, many articles, and it said, New Orleans lost its best friend. And it said, when John was with you, he was never on his phone. He was always present. When John was with you, he always remembered the last conversation. And when John was with you, he remembered what was important to you. I work with college students every day of the week, and I love who you are. At some point, you gotta get out of your own way, and the story has to become one of courage. The story has to become one of vulnerability. The story has to become one that we're proud to tell. Because right now, that's not the world that we live in. Our founders and the people who came before us took care of our organizations, or we wouldn't be here today. The only thing that makes you a member of your organization are the beautiful ceremonies that you make promises to. And for many of us, including me, when I was 19 years old, I had no idea that making a promise to a sorority was going to change my life and bring incredible people into my journey and give me the opportunities of a lifetime. I had no idea what that was going to be about. And look today, as you go through this process of figuring out who you are, because that's what college is about, really think about those young men and women who were intentional, those young men and women who wrote these beautiful ceremonies and rites of passage and included colors and symbols and visions of just good people. Think about how are we living the legacy of those folks. Would they be proud of us today? Would they look at sororities and fraternities and would they say, oh, they raise a lot of money? We appreciate that. But what would they really want us to do? They'd want us to be great people who stand up for those who are less fortunate than us. They would want us to tell a story of friendship. If you listen to Lori Hart speak, she talks about that this is really about friendship. And so often we forget that fraternities and sororities were founded on love, with people who had shared values, shared goals, and wanted to get through life and be supported. In my life today, the people who surround me are fraternity men and sorority women who I've either gotten to grow up with and or grow old with. For some of you, you're gonna check out and walk away before that happens. And if you do, you've missed the best part of being in a fraternity and sorority. That's when you get to go through those things in life that aren't always easy. They aren't always the ones that are simple. But you have to decide. I'd like to challenge you for two things today. One, I'd like for you to think, what is my role, the character I play in my organization's story? Would my founders be proud of that person? Have I been a good friend? Have I stuck to my word? Have I committed to something that maybe is greater than myself? And two, if that story is worth being told, then tell it. Because if you don't, from the lens of people outside of our world, it's not such a good story. But we're the only ones that can change that. Believing in something that other people think isn't so honorable is sometimes difficult. But we have to make the decisions of what that's gonna look like. Today's young college students are probably the brightest that have ever stepped foot on college campuses. I work a lot with young women and talking about empowering you to sit at the table. I work with young fraternity men who don't be frat boys, be fraternity men. That's who the people are gonna wanna take you home to their families. Stop being the idiots and stop letting people in our organizations bring us down. Start being those people who lift us up, who truly go back to a time when we were looked at something to be proud of. My niece just joined Tri Delta, and I'm watching her go through that journey, and every step of the way has been so much fun. And she told me her favorite thing so far has been NomCom, nominating committee. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. She didn't even go to her formal. She said, because what's important to me is what happened in NomCom. I'm like, okay. Because I'd have been at formal, as I told you. But what I know is when she walks in the room and those young sisters embrace her and tell her how proud they are, she gets up the next morning and is a better person because of that. Those are the stories we need to tell, but we have to have the stories in order to tell them. Next time something's happening that doesn't feel right, stop it. Next time someone does something great, celebrate it. Next time you know someone needs help, don't say somebody else is gonna take care of it. The stories for me continue to be about growth and about change. And when I see you be brave and vulnerable, for me, that's when I know our young founders would be extremely proud. I've ended every presentation I've ever done with a poem that I heard when I was a very, very young fraternity and sororities affair professional. And it goes, you never know when someone may catch a dream from you. You never know when a little word or something you may do might open up the window of a mind that seeks the light. The way you live may not matter at all, but you never know, it might. And just in case it could be that another's life through you might possibly change for the better with a broader and brighter view. Seems it might be worth a try at pointing the way to the right. The way you live may not matter at all, but you never know, it might. If the way we live as fraternity men and sorority women could do the good that I know we're capable of doing, we really can change the world. When big ideas come and somebody takes them and makes them happen, that's when we know that we're capable of doing anything. And if we can't, then who do we expect to? The way each one of us lives our lives on a daily basis matters. And I hope that that's the biggest message as you tell your story, make it be one that impacts people's lives. Thank you.